What's up, hybrids? Welcome back to another episode of the Fandom Hybrid Podcast. This is Hanako, and I am here with Anthony, Lori, and Mike, and we are discussing episode 1 of the new Marvel Disney Plus series, Moon Knight. And before we get started on our discussion, I just want to know by a show of hands. Well, of course, we can't see Lori, but we already know the answer to this question. How many of us had no working knowledge of this character prior to the announcement of this series? Okay. So Anthony, you had no knowledge of this character, even with your.
I know of the character, but I don't have a working knowledge.
Okay. Did you ever read the comics for Moon Knight?
No, I think I may have read one where he teamed up with maybe Blade, I think.
Okay.
That might be the only. That was a while ago, though.
Okay.
Okay.
Mike has his hand raised.
I'm starting off early. I have a theory. Okay. So I know we haven't talked about anything yet, but
I walked right into that one, didn't I?
You
really did.
It was Bushman.
I mean, I didn't even have to open the door. You just literally walked in. Okay, so
it was Bushman.
There is
shout
out to Eric Voss.
Bushman.
Oh, okay.
All right, shout out to Eric Voss of New Rock Stars. They posted a synopsis of episode 1, or like they showed an interview that Oscar Isaac did in Brazil. I think it was either a Portuguese or a Spanish speaking country. I think it might have been a Spanish speaking country, so it might not have been Brazil, but I digress. So they were talking about the future for Moon Knight. They were saying, well, what do you want him to do? Do you want him to be connected with the Avengers or what? And he was like, and Oscar Isaac said, you know what I want? You know what I really want? I want him to be in Midnight Suns. For those of you who don't know, I had to look it up myself. And once I looked it up, I've been excited about it for literally 2 weeks since. Now, Midnight Suns is kind of like the dark, like Justice League Dark, or the dark. It's really like Justice League Dark in DC. It's basically all the kind of horror based heroes like Blade, Morbius, Hellstrom, Caretaker, Danny Ketch, and Johnny Blaze, Ghost Riders, both of those versions, and Moon Knight joined them in a couple of runs as well. Can I tell you, if I see one of those freaking Ghost Riders, and we can get a Midnight Suns run on Disney Plus around Halloween. I mean,
you feel very passionate about this.
I want to see. I mean, do you not want to see this? Like, come on! It's like we could actually have. I mean, Iron Fist was in it. Hannibal King was in it from Blade Trinity, the character that Ryan Reynolds played, but of course he's probably not going to play it. Punisher was in a run. Dr. Voodoo was in a run. Frank Drake. Doctor Strange was one of the main members of the Midnight Suns too. Okay. So there are a shit ton of entanglements, and sorry, bad choice of words, but I digress. There's a shit ton of connections that we can make through Doctor Strange, through the Multiverse of Madness, through this show, through Iron Fist, through even probably through Daredevil. There are a whole lot of connections we can make, but I'm really excited to possibly see Moon Knight, Doctor Strange, one or two Ghost Riders. I mean, that show would be hella. That movie would be hella worth watching, I think. And it'll probably give Morbius a chance to well, no, I'm not. No,
we're not going to do that. We're not going to start.
Not going to do it.
We haven't even discussed Morbius yet, so we won't even go there. Let's get back to Moon Knight. Moon Knight.
So, I just want to get that off my chest.
So maybe a long time ago, I may have come across Midnight Suns at some point, but I do remember a Moon Knight Blade issue. Yeah. Maybe it was a Blade issue where Moon Knight was in, or vice versa. But I went through a phase where I wasn't reading a lot. Well, I read a lot of comic books, but there was a time when I completely stopped.
Mhm.
But I do remember reading that. So other than that, that's all I knew of Moon Knight. I don't have any working knowledge of
Well,
the character.
he's mainly a loner. So just to give a little bit of highlight, because the major run started in the 80s, but it started around 75. First, the appearance was in Werewolf by Night, issue number 32. Basically, what it is that he is born and raised in Chicago, and he is the son of a rabbi. His name is Mark Spencer, and he
Spectre.
basically again, long day with the engineers at work. All right, let me start over. So basically, he's the son of a rabbi, Marcus Spector, was born in Chicago, and he early on has some issues with himself because the god Khonshu, who's the moon god, hence Moon Knight of ancient Egypt, becomes interested in him, and he chooses him at a very young age to become his avatar. Now, that would be fine, except for the fact that Mark starts developing dissociative identity disorder, and he meets this guy named Stephen Grantley. He's a kid, and he and Stephen are best friends, except for there's one problem. He's Stephen. Okay, there's your first problem. So basically, he develops a couple of different multiple personalities. He's a military guy. He's a businessman. He's a stockbroker. And he's a wino slash bum.
Cab
and then,
driver.
of course, a cab driver. And then he's also a world-renowned archaeologist. It's all the same person. But with him, he doesn't realize most of the time that he's 5, 6, 8, 9 different people. And when he does realize it, that's when he gets into trouble, and he gets into various fights. And like Mike said, the Midnight Suns running around with Punisher, a little bit of Spider-Man. Basically, he's one of those Iron Man knockoffs that they try to create back in the 70s, early 80s, trying to develop it. Because, like I said earlier, when they did Demon in the Bottle with Iron Man, it was either you liked it or you didn't. It kind of pulled people away. That's when they threw Rhodey in as Iron Man in the early 80s. Still some of the best stuff they've done with Rhodey. But with him, they wanted sort of like a Batman-like character, but they decided to make him crazy with the Thing. So basically with Moon Knight...
Don't use the word crazy.
No, this actually warrants it. He actually is crazy. He is actually crazy. I understand what you're saying, but no. This is... You have to see further. The other thing with him is that he is a very good fighter. He's got some really cool abilities, and he has a couple of people that hang out with him. Marlene Duchamp, who sort of like is a sidekick. He gets a few other sidekicks, and basically he's one of the cooler characters. But if you read Moon Knight, then you obviously are one of those people like me who used to read comic books at lunchtime, the corner of the cafeteria, because you basically are a nerd. He's a detective, proficient in martial arts, armed combat, utilizes high-tech equipment. He also has mystical visions. He used to have increased strength, speed, endurance, depending on the lunar cycle. So basically, that's Moon Knight.
Okay.
Also, fun fact, he met Taskmaster, the real Taskmaster, never mind. Okay, he met Taskmaster, and Taskmaster refused to fight him because Moon Knight would rather take a punch than dodge a punch.
Right.
So he doesn't really have a fighting style that Taskmaster can actually copy.
Right.
So Taskmaster would hit him, and he would just keep coming forward. So he's like, you know what, fuck this, I'm not doing this. Fuck it, I'm out.
Yeah,
so,
he doesn't care. And a lot of the stuff, and the costume changes between dark gray, silver, and white. And it all depends on what personality goes into being Moon Knight at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, there's a lot of Egyptian stuff. There's a lot of goddess stuff. There's a lot of hieroglyphic stuff. I was excited to see this because I couldn't think of them doing Moon Knight any other way than the way that they did this episode.
And there's also a 3-piece suit stuff too, which
that's true.
I mean, that's the one poster that you've been seeing with him with the mask on,
right,
and the vest and the tie. That's my fave. That shit is so sharp and tight. That shit's so fire. It's actually the I actually put that as the home screen on my phone because that's just incredible. But yeah, I mean, this character is so good. It's so deep as far as the things that he's been through, the things that he can do, the things that he is, the powers that he has, and everything. He's a very complex character, but he's also a really fun character because you never know when you never know who's going to show up and who's going to take control. It's basically like a clown car where the clowns keep jumping from the back to the front to start driving. Like, no, my turn. No, I want to drive. No, I want to drive. So it keeps swerving back and forth. So
yeah, because he could literally be mid-fight, and all of a sudden he can go from Mark to Steven to literally in the middle of a fight.
Yes, we saw some of that in this episode.
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah.
So, like Anthony, I have no knowledge of Moon Knight, and I had never heard of this character before until they started announcing it as one of the series that they were going to bring to Disney Plus. And so I was in it for two reasons. One, because it's Marvel, and two, because Oscar Isaac. That was all I needed to know.
Oscar's killing it.
We started seeing the promotions and the imagery and the posters and the trailers, and I was just like, whoa, this looks like it is going to be amazing. I was not prepared for how amazing the first episode was. And it's, the first episode, there wasn't a lot of action because we're being introduced to the character. And not just to that character, but there are three separate components to this character that we are getting in this first episode. And you kind of get introduced to them slowly. You start out with Steven, and then it just kind of morphs into Steve and Mark. And then you have the voice in the background. And if you're not familiar with the concept of what the character is going through as far as the DID, you're just kind of like, okay, so what's going on? So I like the way that they introduced all those components. And I know that we've only met those three parts of his personality. I'm sure they're probably going to add a few others during the course of this series. But let's talk about the episode because it starts out very interesting. You have this person who is doing, it's almost like some sort of ritual. You have the glass and they're taking the drink, and then they take the cane and they smash the glass and they put the glass in their shoes and start walking. And I was just like my daughter, when she watched it, she looked at me like, what the fuck did we just watch? I have no clue. Like
it's been compared to like the self-flagellation scene in the second Da Vinci Code movie, where Paul Bettany was the monk and he would like beat himself on the back. Like, okay, it's basically self-flagellation is something that a lot of devout zealots do to repent of whatever little sin that they've done.
Yeah,
so
I know what it is. I've never seen Da Vinci Code, so it's not in my wheelhouse.
Okay, I mean, I kind of threw it out there just because Paul Bettany was in it, but okay, sorry.
Yeah,
but I digress. But yeah, I could not watch that scene. I even every time it comes up and like I see now every time I see a pair of those sandals, I go like ugh. It's like my feet start curling up, and I'm like, I can't watch that. No, God, that's just.
It was uncomfortable. Like you could hear when he slid his feet into the sandals, you hear the crunch of the glass, and I was just like, why is he doing this? And then when he stands up, of course, with the cane and he walks off, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is supposed to be the antagonist. I don't know much about the show, but I do know that much, that is Ethan Hawke's character. So yes,
okay.
Mike.
So I'm sorry. This is. Since Lori can't be seen, I figure I'll go ahead and raise my hand and be the one that gets excited. So Harrow is actually in the comic books. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lori. Harrow is really not as big of a character as he's being made out to in this series. But we know how Marvel does. Marvel usually gets smaller characters and builds them into bigger characters to suit their needs. But Harrow he was only like a one-issue character in the comic book. Like
that sounds familiar. Character. Yeah. It's sort of like with WandaVision, how they made Agatha way more than she is in the comic book. I mean, she's there in the comic books, but she's not as big as they made her in WandaVision. So yeah, same concept.
Okay.
Yeah, shout out to Ethan Hawke for pulling out, like, for doing the homework and studying David Koresh and doing all that other stuff that he did to get ready for this thing, because he was like heavy. Like I literally was like, I expected him to be carrying I expected him to be drinking Kool-Aid at the beginning instead of water. I was like, he is like heavy into it. Him and Oscar have outdone like really good work so far. Like they're killing
I'm glad you brought it up because I want to at least say something on this episode.
it.
So
Please.
I'm going to say, with I know we want to get into the episode, but before we start, I just want to give a huge shout out to Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke, because if I could pick an actor that could carry a series by themselves and being like 90% of the episode by himself, it would be Oscar Isaac. Like Hanako said about Zoe Kravitz, I could watch Oscar Isaac in a scene in any movie about anything ever.
Absolutely.
And just watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And Ethan Hawke is one of the most underrated actors of our time. And he was extremely like creepy and compelling all at the same time. So if I had
And
to
a
pick
little charismatic too.
Yes. And if I had to pick between two actors who could pull these roles off, it would be those two guys. And I absolutely loved them. That's all. Back to our regularly scheduled love fest.
Yeah, I mean, he did so good, and he was basically soft spoken through the whole episode. He never raised his voice. He was really just like, even when he was talking to Steven, he was like, I don't want to ask again. I'm not going to ask again. I really.
You mean as far as when he was Mark?
Yeah, when he was in the little village. And
you're talking about Ethan Hawke's character. Okay, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, he was like, I don't want to ask. I'm not going to ask again. And he was like very even toned, and it's just like, bruh. Like
those are the ones you have to watch out for. The quiet ones,
right?
And even after he realized that something was right with him, he was like, no, just let him go. Just let him go.
Yeah, because I think he was like, okay, we might need to examine this a little further. Yeah. To see what's going on, because I mean, it was obvious from the way Steven was acting, like he didn't know what was going on. You could there are some things that you can fake, and then there are some things that you cannot. And that whole scene with him trying to give him the scarab and not being able to, like, I'm watching this knowing that this is a show and knowing that this is acting. But the way Oscar Isaac controlled his body, it really felt like he couldn't, like, it's almost like an invisible hand was there holding him, like just watching him on the screen.
When he forces
like a master class, just watch.
He forces his arm towards him, they start walking backwards. He's like, I'm not doing this.
It was very interesting.
Like, I mean, he's killing this. Like, he really is. Like, if you didn't have the auditory clues that someone else was doing this behind the scenes, like, because he didn't have that when he was doing the scene. Like, he was literally doing that he was probably doing that basically on his own. He probably had someone kind of yelling from the side do it, but he was basically doing that on his own, like, without hearing how we're hearing it. So I'm like, he's doing a fucking great job right now.
Yep. So let's meet Steven. So Steven's character, when we're introduced to him, he's waking up in bed, and already when you start out, again, if you're not familiar with the character and what he's going through, it's weird. He's tethered to a pole in his bedroom by his ankle, which I automatically, when I looked at it, I was like, oh, okay, he must sleepwalk. And then when he gets out of the bed, he has the bed surrounded by sand, which, again, weird if you don't understand, what's going on. He's got painter's tape on the door. So there are different things that he is doing. And again, like I said, obviously he must sleepwalk, or so you would think. But what we find out later during the episode is that he has these episodes where he wakes up and he's in places that he doesn't remember going to. I'm not sure if anything was ever as extreme as what he went through in this episode, because at one point he falls asleep and when he wakes up, he's in the French Alps. And it's kind of like, I was in London just a few minutes ago. So I have a coworker who actually has a friend who has DID. And so he was talking to that friend watching this episode because he wanted to know just like how right the writers got it. And according to him, the friend said, yeah, that they pretty much nailed it in this episode, and talked about, you know, other movies where DID is kind of talked about or shown, Split being the more prominent one, and also I think one of the more recent ones. And apparently that friend hated the way that they did Split, but she loved the way that they kind of, you know, showed the different things that he does to kind of tether himself to reality in this episode. So I thought that was real interesting because, again, I'm not very familiar with DID except for what we see on TV and films, because I don't know, you know, personally, I don't know anyone who's ever been afflicted with that. So I don't know much about it, but apparently this show is doing a great job of kind of illustrating what a day in the life of a person with DID is kind of like.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. A lot of times, unless you watch a show or a movie like Sybil, that is dedicated to being about a person with DID, because like Split was more of a caricature. It wasn't necessarily meant to be accurate, but the shows or movies that you watch where it's accurately depicted is fairly close.
Okay.
But it used to be called multiple personality disorder, but in the DSV, they went away from using that term to dissociative identity disorder, which is pretty much what it is, because it isn't always as clearly defined as it's shown in this movie. Sometimes it's more fluid.
Okay.
Than it seems.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here we go with Marvel again, shining light on mental disorders and giving them a face so that people don't see them as something to be feared or to be degraded about. They're actually putting a face on it where you can kind of see, where you see it and they're like, oh, well, he's not really that different from me, except like he has the chemicals in his brain is a little off. So it kind of makes people look at mental disorders in a different light. And I love how Marvel, with all of it, they deal with certain mental issues in all these series. In all the series that they've had, they've dealt with mental issues. And I don't know if that's on purpose or if that's something that just kind of happened, but it kind of seems like they're doing it on purpose, where they're trying to get people to see, you know, how to not like set out people who have mental disorders, but to kind of to not single them out, but give them, like, you know, that treat them like regular people or help them out. So I got to shout out Marvel for that.
Yeah. So let's continue on with the story. As we said, Stephen, you know, we're introduced to his character by kind of seeing his tethering methods as far as how he deals with what he believes is just a sleepwalking issue, you know, sleepwalking and blacking out. I think at this point it's easy to assume that Stephen is not aware that he has DID. You know, he just thinks that he sleepwalks and he, you know, blacks out a couple of times, maybe forgets some things. And so we see him go to his job. He works at the museum. And when you first see him at the job, it appears like he's one of the tour guides, like he's very knowledgeable about the my mind just went blank, about the exhibits that are there. You know, he's talking to one of the little girls who's there kind of defacing museum property. Again, this will be the second time I've said this, but as Casey says, that kid needs a whooping. You know, that's one of her favorite catchphrases when it comes to children not doing what they're supposed to be doing in a show. But, you know, so he's talking to this little girl about the Egyptian gods and deities that they have on display there. and he gets stopped by, I'm assuming she is his supervisor. But when I tell you, this bitch is one of the characters, like she opens her mouth, and after the first sentence, you're like, oh, I hate her. I absolutely hate her. Yes, Mike.
Sorry. Okay. So let's go back. Yes, I hate that. But she needs to get eaten by the alligator goddess too. But I digress. Let's go back a little bit. So he tells the little girl how they prepare mummies, how they get a hot poker, they go in through the nose and they pull everything out except for the heart, so that because they need the heart to go in the afterlife so they can be admitted into the field of reeds. And the little girl says, oh, is that what happened to you? How you got rejected from the field of reeds? He's like, no, because I'm alive.
Right? Yeah, because I'm not dead. I was like, oh, that's interesting. What were you about to say?
I think
I was gonna say, did anyone else have mummy flashbacks?
I did.
A ton.
Absolutely.
Ton.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just wondering if I was the only one.
No, absolutely.
No. Okay.
I think we need to watch out for this little girl. I think there's something, like, I think she actually, unless somehow she sends Mark Spector in there, because I think we're gonna find I'm sorry, I have a theory. I think we're gonna find out that Mark actually got killed. And he made a deal with, I think, because I think this is how it goes. Lori can correct me if I'm wrong. This is how it goes in the comics, that Mark was doing something, he got killed. Then Khonshu made a deal with him. He said that if he does something, if he becomes his avatar and does the things that he tells him to do, kills the people, corrects whatever wrongs that Khonshu tells him to correct, then he'll free him and let him go and maybe come back to life.
Yeah, because he was at an archaeological dig and it just went south very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But the retcon that I was reading earlier on Wiki about how he, as a child, had sort of decided that he was going to have him no matter what, that I think that might be new. But yeah, no, he went wrong, got, Moon God stepped in, hi, let's make a deal. Pretty much.
What did he do? Read a book that shouldn't have been read?
No,
don't open the book.
No harm ever come from reading a book.
Well, I'm rereading Lord of the Rings. That might be different. But yeah, by the way, Andy Serkis reading Lord of the Rings, excellent, highly recommended. It's actually enjoyable. Yeah, no, it's something that I forget exactly, but he was in a tomb, something went left, he opened up, I think it was a coffin or something that he shouldn't have opened, and let's just say he died.
Yeah, but we all know how that goes.
Yeah, basically, yeah, like you said, mummy. But yeah, no, I'm curious too, because they're throwing a lot of Egyptian stuff out at us right away, and usually with Moon Knight, you only get the Egyptian stuff every once in a while. It's more of his day-to-day stuff, so this should be interesting.
Okay. Yeah, so anyway, he's dealing with the bitchy supervisor. And then one of the other ladies, who I guess is a tour guide, comes over to him. And, she just starts a conversation with him. And she's like, yeah, so are we still on for tomorrow? And he's like, tomorrow. She was like, yeah, steak, 7:00. Okay, yeah. And then he asked her, he was like, are you asking me out? And she's looking at him like, you're cute. See you tomorrow. So obviously, again, this is where we kind of get the idea that there's something more going on with his character, because he's obviously asked this woman out and she said yes, and he doesn't remember. And even the boss comes over and she was like, oh, so you shot your shot. I didn't know you did that. And he was like, I didn't either. And she's looking at him. She was like, oh yeah, great cat you are. And I was like, what is this bitch's problem? Like, I'm sorry I'm cursing so early on in the episode, but what is her problem? Like, from the minute we see her on the screen, she has it in for him. And I'm just like, something, I don't know. I feel like something's not right about her either. But I mean, now that I'm thinking about what Mike said about the little girl and her making the comment of, I guess kind of insinuating that he's not alive. And he was like, yeah, but that doesn't make sense because I'm not dead. I'm like, okay, I'm curious. Like, does she know that there's something strange about him? Is she even really that? Like, I don't know. I'm just a little confused at this point. Like, why she is so?
Maybe she sees dead people. She has a sixth sense about her.
Who, the little girl or the bitch?
The little
I
girl.
see what you
okay.
did there.
Okay.
Thank you,
Sixth
sir.
sense. Dead people. Gotcha.
Yeah, but anyway. So Steven's character, he's interesting. Obviously, he's a little socially awkward, which also adds to his confusion about having asked this woman out and her saying yes, because it looks like from what we see of him at first, he doesn't really have a lot of friends. Like, he literally spends his evenings sitting out by a statue, eating and conversing with the statue, you know. And then the other thing was, when he leaves and he's saying goodbye to the security guard calls him Scotty, which obviously is not his name. So I'm like, is Scotty another one of his, personalities? Like, is this how, like, I'm kind of wondering if different people in the museum have met him as certain people. Like, does the boss know him as Steven, and does the security guard know him as Scotty, and does somebody else know him as something else? Like, I'm a little confused. Okay, Mike, you're gonna have to stop doing that, because that's getting on my nerves. Just talk.
I'm sorry. I just don't want to interrupt you. Okay. So yeah, that kind of got on my nerves, but there's not I don't think there's an altar that's named Scotty. So I don't know if he walked through and introduced himself as Scotty or not. Also, he said he invited her to steak, even though he's vegan. So that was kind of weird too. Mm-hmm. But I really want to talk about the statue. So one more time, I have a theory. There have been a lot of things. You look at him, the way he converses with the statue, and how, everyone's seen the statue, like, the guy, he paints himself, he doesn't move unless you tip him, and da da da. I don't think the statue is actually a person. I think the statue is a statue, and I think he's just sitting there talking to him. And
I'm sitting here looking.
It's a person. And he's a mind.
Because I'm looking at it now.
It's a person to Steven, but Steven sees things. I know. Look, I'm not dumb. I know it's a person. I know it's a person with gold spray paint on it. I know that. So what I'm saying is, okay. I'm not saying that he wasn't a person painted in gold. I realize that. I know he's a person painted in gold. What I'm saying is that Steven might see him as a person painted in gold, but he's actually a statue, like a literal statue.
See, that's the funny thing, because when I watched the episode the first time, I thought he was talking to a statue. It's only as I'm watching it in the background and I'm looking at Steven talk to him, and I'm like, why does that look like he has real eyes? And then when they showed the face, I said, oh, wait, that's like one of those living statues, like a person who is there as. So right. I was like, oh, wait, okay.
So that's what I'm thinking, because I also don't think that his mom's alive, or that his mom is either his mom's not alive or his mom's ignoring him, because he keeps calling his mom and getting the answering machine, and he keeps talking to his mom, and he keeps saying, every time he gets off with her, he says later, Gator, which kind of refers to a team who is like a part gator goddess and is part crocodile goddess. So I'm just like, and it's just weird that, the whole thing is really weird to me. I think it makes me kind of think that Steven sees things the way, when he's Steven, he sees things one way. When he's Mark, he sees things another way. And when he becomes the cabbie, he'll see things maybe in an entirely different way. So I just think that's something.
I'm not going to necessarily disagree with you, but the reason why I think that's really just a mime is because if you pay attention to the background, you see someone twirling fire. So it's almost like this little performance area. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of performance art going on around there. So I just assume.
And why would you tip a real statue? Like the people who wanted to take the picture, and they got ready to leave, and Steven was like, don't forget the tip. And they were like, oh yeah. So there's like a tip hat right at his feet. Why would they tip a actual statue?
Maybe he has a hat down there, and people think that he's just a vagrant sitting there talking, and they just don't want him to come chasing after them.
Well,
for a
he's
tip.
supposed
Well, I'm going to go
be
back to
Crowley.
there's a bunch of other live performers around there too. I just assumed he was a mime performing
Okay.
just like them. So
The statue is supposed to be a character named Crawley, who at various times is another persona, and also is someone who actually helps Moon Knight out. He is known for having his hat with a little flower sticking out of it, and it was loosely based upon Batlash from DC Comics. Batlash is a contemporary of Jonah Hex, and he's a screw up, and he's falls in love with the drop of a hat, and has been known to get himself drunk and wind up in weird situations. And they sort of based Crawley off of Batlash.
Okay. Okay.
Better than Batroc, I guess. I am too fast.
Yeah. So anyway, Stephen goes home that evening and we see him go through his little routine. He makes sure that his sand is there. He feeds his goldfish. Oh, speaking of, okay, so we got to talk about the goldfish because the goldfish actually becomes kind of important in this show. So he has a goldfish named Gus, right? And Gus is basically Stephen's Nemo. You know, he's a goldfish with one fin, kind of swimming off balance in the in the goldfish tank. And, you know, he feeds him, he talks to him, you know, has a conversation with him. I noticed that he has a lot of conversations he feels comfortable having conversations with things that can't talk back to him. And then it's the people that he can actually have conversations with when he seems more nervous and more uncomfortable. But yeah, so Gus is his little friend.
I can relate.
So he comes home and he goes through his routine. He makes sure that, you know, the sand is filled and undisturbed at the foot of his bed. He makes sure Gus is fed. He makes sure his doors are closed and that the painter's tape is over the seam in the door just in case he tries to go out. And then he tethers himself to the bed. But then he lays there with a Rubik's Cube and he's throwing it up in the air. And you hear in the background this audiobook, I guess. And it's supposed to be helping him to stay awake, which I'm guessing is something that he thinks will help his sleepwalking. Again, not very familiar with that aspect of any type of illness. I know my son used to sleepwalk, but that was a weird thing because he was a child. He doesn't do it anymore. But so he does this and he's listening to the instructions from the video, and it's like, stay awake, think about certain things, you can read. And so you see him kind of going back and forth between being awake and the reading. And it's kind of, you see it go back and forth, back and forth. So I'm assuming this is maybe over the course of a couple of nights. I don't think it's the same night, him going back and forth between the bed and the books, because every time we see him with the books, he's reading kind of sort of the same thing, but you can see that he's highlighting things. And it just gave me the impression that this is taking place over maybe multiple nights. But what happens is at some point he does fall asleep. And when he wakes up, he's fully dressed, he's in the grass, and he's again in the French Alps.
And he has a broken jaw.
And he has a broken jaw. And it's just kind of like, what? So
when he resets his jaw, oh my God, that sound. Ugh.
Just looking at the way his face was when he woke up, he's like his face was completely, that looks painful.
I should hurt my jaw doing that.
But he gets up and he's turning around trying to figure out where the hell he is. And when he turns around, there's like this big building castle, and there's a guy up there. He's like, hi. And the guy waves to him. Of course, you have a second guy like, what the hell are you doing? And start shooting at him.
Hold up, we gotta go back because you missed the whole conversation he actually has in his mind with Khonshu. Shout out to the great F. Murray Abraham for voicing Khonshu, by the way. We gotta make sure we give him his props. Because Khonshu says, "Oh, the idiot's in control again," and he continuously. I think this is going to be a running thing where he continuously refers to Steven as the idiot that's in control when Mark is not running the body.
Yeah.
So he's like, and he reaches in, he finds this, he finds a scarab, which is going to be very important later, and then it's like. He's like, give Mark control of the body, and he's like, "Well, what are you talking about?" And
he's like, "Who's Mark? What?"
I felt so bad for him because he literally is like I mean, he's one minute he's throwing a Rubik's Cube in the air, next minute he's in a field in somewhere it looks like Switzerland with a broken jaw, and then he hears this voice in his head, this old voice in his head that sounds like someone who killed Mozart, and it's like he has no idea what the hell's going on.
Did you just say he sounds like someone who's killed Mozart?
Yes.
Yes. What would that sound like? I'm just curious.
F. Murray Abraham played the guy that killed Mozart in Amadeus.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. That's one of my abstract film references. Okay. I apologize. I should have explained that ahead of time. I digress. Okay. I apologize.
I think you and I are the only ones who saw Amadeus.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
I saw it.
I mean, I remember seeing it, but it was so like probably Anthony, when it first came out.
This is why we're partners, because you get all my obscure references. It's like I live for seeing you laugh at stuff where Hanukkah's like, huh? And it's like I love this little bottom corner of my screen. This is awesome. This is why I love you, dog. That's why you're my brother.
Hanukkah, I'll have you know that way back in 1984 or 83 or wherever it came out, seeing Amadeus made you the cool kid for the week. Trust me.
For the week.
It did.
Not in Atlanta, Georgia.
Well, in the Midwest it did, because it came out in the winter.
At all.
Look, that between that and some other, trust me. Look, if you saw that at Dead Poet Society, you was the cool kid, as they would say.
I mean that's Thomas Holtz's crowning achievement in his career, other than Animal House, I guess.
Hey, don't knock Animal House.
I love Animal House.
I do too. I love Animal House. I know, okay, can't review it, can't talk about it. It's inappropriate and all this other stuff, but it's still a good movie.
Okay, so he gets shot. So let's go to him getting shot at.
Yeah. So these guys that are in the little castle or whatever, they start shooting at him, like, as far as he knows, for no reason. Like, he just woke up there. He doesn't know. So I'm guessing his sleepwalking problem is a bit more serious than he thinks, because he wakes up in a whole different country, So he starts running. He heads to the village, and of course, whoever these gunmen belongs to, they're all over the city. So he's running and he's trying to get away from these people. And he walks smack dab into the middle of I don't know what you want to call it, but it's kind of like, again, we're going to go with the mummy references. I think that's just going to be the theme for the night. But you remember when Imhotep started gaining his powers and he started taking over people, and the people were like walking blindly, Imhotep. It's kind of like the way the people in this village are doing. They're just not saying the names, and they're not under any kind of trance. But as he's running, you see people like in crowds all going towards the center of the square. And it's weird because he realizes something weird is going on, and he's also trying to hide. So he puts his hood on, and all of a sudden he's in the middle of the square. And Harold, Ethan Hawke's character, starts walking through the crowd. And of course, everybody starts partying when he walks through, again, giving me serious Mummy and Imhotep vibes, because this happens in the Mummy. And he goes to the front of the crowd and he starts talking to them about this goddess, this god, Amet. And he has someone volunteer to come up to be judged. Okay. He places his cane in this person's hand and he moves it so that it starts swinging. And while he's holding this person, he has a tattoo of justice scales on his arm. And the tattoo starts moving like it's weighing this person's character, it's weighing this person's soul. So basically what we find out during the course of the episode is that Ahmet is one of these guys who got tired of waiting for people to be judged. So apparently she can see where the whole course of your life takes you. And so he uses the power that she speaks through him to judge people based on who they are and what they're going to become. And if it's found that they are good, okay, cool, no problem. But if it's found that they are not, then apparently he also has the ability to like literally suck the life out of them, because it happens.
Your soul is mine.
No, wrong movie. We're not talking about Mortal Kombat. We're talking about
That's
Imhotep.
all I thought about. It's like next thing you know, she's ashen gray and like falling back. I'm like,
but that's what Imhotep did. He used to suck the souls out of people when he was trying to regain his body. So yes, we're sticking with the mummy. You just But anyway,
okay. Real quick, let me get. So Amit is what I have written down right here. She is a devourer of the dead. She is her head's a crocodile, her body's a lion, her legs are hippopotamus legs. So she is like entirely fucked up. And this goes back to
somebody's been experimenting.
Right. This kind of gives me a theory that a lot of in Egypt, they had a lot of children writing that, like describing what their gods look like, because they're like, okay, kids, we're gonna make a god, make a god of the dead. What should she look like? Yo, give her hippopotamus legs, and give her the head of a crocodile, and give her lion arms. They're like, okay, because this is like really weird. Plus, you have to admit that for us geeks, most of our first fandoms were either dinosaurs, Greek mythology, or ancient Egypt. Those are like the first things that we became really passionate about, that we bought books about, that we watched movies about, that we dressed up for Halloween about, that we wrote about. That is one of the first things that we really treated like a fandom. So I think that for some reason I'm getting the feeling that Amit, like, she's a devourer of the dead, but I think that she really wants to get good souls as opposed to bad souls, because I'm looking at the guy and I'm like, I don't think he's all that good. And then you look at the old woman who is like freaked out because she's like, I've been good all my life. And he's like, well, maybe you did something tomorrow that's bad, which is the worst explanation I've ever heard in my life. Like, really? She's like, well, she can see into the future. Maybe you're getting ready to trip some kid tomorrow. You know, you're doing bad. And I'm like, really? So I think that that Amit is really a bad god, and that she devours good souls and leaves bad souls.
I mean, it's kind of, it's kind of weird because Casey and I were talking about this, dealing with The Walking Dead, and then also Michelle and I were talking about this earlier with Outlander. So it's so weird that when it comes to religion and judging people, excuse me, for certain acts or, possible acts, that people tend to judge them based on, the quote unquote evidence that they have, but their ways of judging them is weird. It's kind of like in the Outlander episode we were talking about today, there's a baby who was born with dwarfism, and some of the little Presbyterian children on the ridge, they placed him in a basket in the river because they wanted to see if he would float, because their parents told them that children like that are demon spawn, and if they were touched by the devil, that they would float. So that means if he wasn't touched by the devil, he would drown, right? That's kind of what you would think is like the opposite. The person who is good is ends up dying to prove that they are good, but the person who is evil still lives. Same way with the Salem witch trials. When they had the weighing rock, okay, they placed this heavy ass rock on a person's body, and if the rock crushes them, then they're not a witch and they're innocent and their souls will now be free to go to heaven. But if they were witches, then the rock wouldn't crush them, and then you would be able to hang them as a witch. It's so weird how the ways that you prove a person's quote unquote innocence are the ways that are deadly to them. So yeah, you saying that, I'm like, that might actually make sense in a nonsensical way.
Well,
That's my specialty.
This is neither here nor there, but the reason why it was made that way was because their whole intent was to kill the person regardless. If you kind of know sort of what was the motivation behind the witch trials,
I know, but still,
same thing with the weird looking children. Oh, if they survive, we put them out there in the woods, and if the wolves eat them, then they were bad, and if they die out there alone, then they were good, but they're dead regardless.
Yeah.
It's just like they also put witches in chairs and dunked them in the river. So if they floated, if they floated when they're dead, they were good. But if they sank when they were dead, they were bad. So it's like people are weird. Throw rocks at them. Yeah.
But anyway, so the weird part of this scene is that, one of the guys who's chasing after Steven, they come up to Harold and they tell him, they was like, yeah, so we had a little issue with I think he said with the exchange, and the person is still here. Harold says, did you catch the person? No, we think he's here somewhere. So Harold speaks something in Egyptian and everybody bows down. Of course, Steven has no idea what's going on. So he's the lone person standing up. And once he realized everyone is bound, he's like, oh, wait, hold up.
The bollocks.
Right. But at this point, you've already been spotted. So Harold knows that you have this scarab. Again, I'm guessing something happened in order for Steven to end up in that field. And then also for him to have a broken jaw, like something had to have happened, and for him to end up with that scarab in his pocket, and he just doesn't know what. So we go through this thing.
I have a theory.
I
think he was.
Wait.
Wait. Let me write this down.
Here?
No,
it's happening.
It's
happening, everybody.
I don't have.
Nope, it's too late.
Stop lying. You said it already.
It's on tape.
I don't have a theory.
You have a supposition?
No, well, I think he was dead and he came back to life as Steven instead of Mark when Khonshu brought him back. Because I'm assuming he jumped out of the window and that's why his jaw was broken. He landed, he died, and then Khonshu brought him back.
Well, yeah, because the other thing is when the guard goes to Harold and he says there was a problem with the exchange, someone killed 2 of our men, but we didn't see any dead bodies around him.
Yeah, because he jumped. And this may be it's not really a spoiler, but there was one of the trailers shows him falling out of the window.
Yeah.
So I think what's going to happen is they're probably going to show us all the times that Mark was in control in the future episode, so we'll actually see what happened. Because in the trailer it does show him falling out of the window. So yeah. Anyway, that's beside the point.
That's interesting because I don't think I've seen. I'm trying to think if I've seen that trailer, or if I did, I probably just didn't put 2 and 2 together.
Because they showed the guy in the back of the cupcake truck falling out of the cupcake truck. Then they show him falling in, going like, whoa,
like the cupcake truck.
I can't wait to get to that. But I think Anthony's onto something. I think that's probably that they're. I mean, from what comes up next, I think they're definitely going to show a lot of things that happen when Steven kind of blanks out and then comes back. Like there's a lot of stuff in between. It kind of reminds me of how we looked with Hawkeye with what's her name during the snap. Like you see her washing her hands, then she poofs, then comes right back.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's kind of the same thing when he has his episode. Like he'll pass out, then he'll come back, but he thinks nothing he doesn't sense the time that's left in between when
Right.
he goes out and comes back. So I think that we're going to end up seeing a lot of what happened with Mark and Control between those times.
Okay, yeah. But I mean, we do kind of get some of that in this scene, because once Harrow realizes that Mark has the scarab, you know, Mark, excuse me, I'm saying Mark. Once he realizes Stephen has the scarab, Stephen is trying to get away. And of course, Harrow has these people under, I won't say he has them under spell, but it's obvious that they are protecting him. They are following him. Like, I think it's kind of blindly, because they don't look like they're in a trance, but they try to capture Stephen and try to get the scarab from him. And he goes on this little, he's trying to fight them off. He's trying to get them off of him. And then all of a sudden you see his eyes roll in the back of his head. And then when he wakes up, he's got blood on him. He's got blood on his hands. And all of these Goonies are dropped dead in the street. So he's like, oh, wait, what the hell? I don't know what's going on. I know you're mad at me. He's telling Harold, he was like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how he got your scarab. I don't know why I can't give it to you. He's just like, at this point, just kind of confused about everything that's going on. So he steals the nearest vehicle so that he can get away. And it just happens to be a cupcake truck. And this leads to one of the more interesting car chases I've seen, because first of all, there is no way I'm doing a car chase on that damn hill with all those damn curves. Absolutely not. And half the time he doesn't even know what's going on. He's driving. Right. These people are following him. Someone actually jumps from the car to the cupcake truck, gets into the cupcake truck, and is like fighting him while he's driving. And he's confused. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. He's like, why are you guys trying to, like, what's going on? He blacks out again. And when he wakes up, he has the gun in his hand. And the person who jumped onto the cupcake truck is now at the back of the cupcake truck, dead. And again, he's just trying to figure out, like, what the fuck is going on? So the people are still chasing him. He narrowly avoids being hit by a log truck. And he's panicking.
Destination.
Well, yeah. And he's panicking again. And then you see him black out again. And when he comes to, he's like, I'm driving this truck backwards on a hill with
no windshield.
Curves. No windshield. And it's just, when I tell you, this car chase scene was just so funny, because he's fighting. And then he's trying to figure out what's going on. And then the people are coming after him. And after he's backwards in the truck, he stops the truck. One of the SUVs comes around. They get out of the truck. And then all of a sudden, you got falling logs from the damn mountain coming and knocking them down. I was like, what in the hell is going on here? Like, what? And he's looking, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. He's trying not to get crushed. You got the windshield wipers wiping a non-existent windshield. There's just a lot of chaos going on here. And
no, when he came back to, when he was driving backwards and he saw the other cars still chasing him, he threw the gun. And Country said, "The idiot threw the gun."
Yes, he threw the gun. He threw the gun. When I say it was chaotic, but this scene was one of the most fun scenes I've ever seen, because he literally has no clue what the hell is going on. And watching him try to figure this out, it was just...
the best part was the logs from earlier came rolling down the hill and knocked them off.
Perfect timing.
Yeah,
right. Because here goes one guy off, and here's another one gets crushed. And as the logs are about to fall on his on the cupcake truck, he wakes up in his bed like, ah! And then he looks around and he starts laughing, because he thinks that this has all been a dream. So I'm like, at this point, I'm so confused.
Yeah, the funny thing is, you know, he checked the tape to see, you know, he checks his tether and he checks the tape, and you don't realize all Mark is doing is putting the tape back and putting the tether on his leg.
Yeah, that's what I
Like-
And
think.
jumping over the sand. Like, it's like, you know, there's nothing.
But then the question, I guess, well, I guess that's answered later on in the episode, because we realize that when Steven goes for his date, he realizes that, you know, the date doesn't show up. And then when he calls her to find out why she's late, she's like, I was at the date 2 days ago. And what he thinks is Friday is actually now Sunday. So I was going to say, but that would be confusing, because I would be like, how did he get from home to the Alps and then back home? Like, and so I'm guessing with his condition, when he blacks out, or when he's not in the front seat or in the driver's seat, as they say, it can be for long periods of time. It's not necessarily like a short period of time. It could be days, maybe weeks, maybe, I mean,
It varies.
okay.
Some people it can be instantaneous.
Okay.
It could last for weeks, days, hours. It depends on the person.
Right. Because I think later on, when he's in his apartment and he figures out that there's, you know, a phone and a key that's hidden in the apartment, the person who's been calling him, when she finally gets through, she thinks she's talking to Mark. She's like, I've been calling you for, what did she say, weeks or months? I think she said months.
I think you said months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So that means at some point, Steven has been in control of his life for a long time, or maybe whenever this thing happened in the Alps, I guess that's what you guys are saying, that when Mark makes the deal with Khonshu, that, okay, if you do what I tell you to do, I'll put you in a new body or whatever. Is that, do you think, when he developed the DID, or am I like?
No, I think he's sort of always had it.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's had it from
He's always had it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't show itself until like he was like 9 or 10.
Okay.
But yeah, no, he's always had it.
Okay. So my question is, in the comics, which one is the dominant personality? Like, which one is the actual person? Is
Mark.
it? Okay.
Mark.
Okay.
Yes, Mark Spector, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So,
But it's like, I mean, you have to look at it like, I mean, a lot of people, if there was a movie, something, I can't remember what, not Basic Instinct. It's a movie with Michael Douglas and Edward Norton Jr. Primal Fear? Was it Primal Fear? Yeah, where he is, where it's like, where Edward Norton has, I think he has dissociative identity disorder, and he would, because he got nominated for an Academy.
He doesn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, he acts like he does, like where it's like where he gets in situations of enormous stress and he switches. So okay, thank you for spoiling. Since I only saw that part of it, I guess never mind. My point doesn't.
That was sort of exaggeration of the condition, but that was there.
Yeah, okay. I'm just saying, like it just depends on the level of stress. Like, you know, I mean, it like and the willingness of one identity to want to give in to the other identity. Like the dominant one, like you can, there's only room for one identity at a time. So one identity has to be willing to step into the back seat. It's just like
well, that's not, hold on, that's not necessarily true either.
Okay, so I'm thinking about what's her name in
don't confuse don't confuse movies with what the actual condition.
Okay, you have a point. You're right. Okay.
Yeah.
So does that negate what you were trying to say, Mike? I was about to call you Mark.
Because I mean, he's right.
Steven.
He's right. He's right as far as there are times when stress can affect it. That's one of the reasons the Hulk is the way he is, and why we have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Right.
Which Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde doesn't have anything to do with stress. It's just when the desire overtakes him. So it's just that let's try not to make it seem
Right.
that this is something that actually is a thing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like
That's the way-
stress
yes.
doesn't necessarily make it happen. And there
Yeah.
isn't necessarily always a dominant. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Stephen wakes up in his apartment. Like I said, he's tethered to his bed. It looks like all of his traps, his booby traps are in place. So he thinks he's just kind of, dreamt the whole thing with the Alps or whatever. He's sitting there eating and he looks over to talk to Gus and he goes back to watching TV. Then all of a sudden he turns and he looks at Gus. And then the next thing we know, Gus is in a blender picture at the pet shop, and Mike's screen name is Where's Nemo, because Gus is not Gus. He is a regular goldfish with 2 fins and swimming perfectly fine. And Steven is at the pet shop like, okay, so I need to know what's going on here, because this is not the same goldfish that I bought, unless goldfish all of a sudden grow back fins. And of course, the pet shop owner is kind of like, haha, you're very funny. You show me another pet store that's going to sell a disabled fish, and she makes a comment about him being there. And he was like, I've never been. She was like, you were here yesterday. And he was like, what? So again,
I have one gripe with Mark. Mark should have been smart enough to know to get an auto fish feeder, and he wouldn't have to worry about this situation.
Yeah, because I was going to say,
not a dog or a cat. You can't do that.
But you can get an auto feeder for a fish.
My nephew is going to see this episode. He's going to be like, because my nephew is a aquarium enthusiast. Like, he has a saltwater tank and a freshwater tank. He has everything. He has an auto feeder that auto feeds the fish. And he would have been like, that would have been one of the first things you do if you have a very specific type of fish. How, like the woman said, how are you ever going to get another disabled fish? Like,
but if you think about it, so like we said later on in the episode, Steven finds the cell phone that belongs to Mark, and it's been hidden. And the person who's been trying to call Mark has said that she's been trying to call Mark for months. So maybe Mark didn't realize about the fish, because of course, if Steven bought this fish, Steven is the one who's been talking to it. It's his friend, his pet. Mark probably would not have thought about the fact that there needs to be an automatic feeder, especially if Mark has not been, in the driver's seat for months. So he takes Steven on this little adventure to the Alps. And when they come back, Gus is dead, because obviously they've been gone for at least 2 days, because like I said, Steven thinks that he's supposed to be going on a date, and it's 2 days after when the date's supposed to be. They come back from this Mark comes back to the apartment, sees that Gus is dead. His thing is, oh, okay, well, we can't let this happen. Steven needs his fish. Let's go get another fish. He probably didn't think about an automatic feeder. And at this point, if he buy an automatic feeder,
he had the foresight for everything else, but he didn't have the foresight for that.
But think about it. If Gus was new, if he acquired Gus during the months that Mark was in the, in the rear seat, he wouldn't have thought about, oh, okay, yeah, we need to plan for this precaution. It's new. He's new.
Just saying.
I'm just saying. Mark, why would Mark think about a fish if he doesn't know that Steven has a fish until they come back from the Alps and he's like, oh, there's a dead goldfish in the tank.
He takes the time to put the tether back on, to put the tape exactly back where it was, to make sure the sand is perfect. He couldn't take a moment for the fish.
But that's what I'm saying. Think about what I'm saying. Mark,
I got you.
Mark has been in the background. Mark has not been in the driver's seat. Mark has been dormant. So Steven has been the one that's been doing all of this, because Steven thinks he has a sleepwalking disorder. But if he just recently purchased this fish, but he's the one that's present, why would he need to think about getting an automatic feeder? It's obvious from Steven's lifestyle, he doesn't really go out. He doesn't have any friends. So as far as he knows, as far as Steven knows, this is my only friend and I'm here every day, so I'm going to be here to feed him. He probably wouldn't think that he needs an automatic feeder.
Yeah,
Now,
but we know, but Mark is getting out and getting around because he made the date with the chick. So it
Yeah, but
wasn't
he's
like
not
he
being.
hasn't
He's
been
not
coming
gone
out.
for like
We have to,
more than one evening though.
unless it
He's not
wasn't
gone-
Mark that made the date.
I swear she said Mark.
I don't
thought she said-
I don't think she
You don't
called him
think
Mark.
so?
No. Layla said Mark, not the girl that went on the date. Those are two different women. Get confused.
So yeah. Layla is the person who was the calling on the phone.
But I thought the girl at the museum called him Mark.
Because he had on his Steven tag and she called him Steven.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. It could have been somebody else.
I don't mean to get everyone up in the tizzy about the fish feeder, but
I'm just saying.
You know?
I'm so enjoying listening to you guys go back and forth. This is so much fun.
Drexel is gonna love that we talked about feeding the fish for 10 minutes.
It's 7/8 of a goldfish. We ain't gonna be sitting here putting an automatic feeder for 7/8 of a goldfish. At least he didn't trim the fin off. Then people would be like, "Oh hell,
that would have been cruel." They couldn't even suggest that. That would have been that would have flown over.
Exactly, that would have been terrible. But no, he actually just bought the fish, put it in there, and till his ankle, and was like, "Okay, come on back." Boom. Then there you go.
So anyway, after as he's figuring out that something's not right with the fish, and he looks at the time, he was like, "Wait, it's 5 something. I literally just woke up." So apparently he's also lost time because he doesn't realize that it's late. He's like, "Oh wait, I have a date tonight." He goes, he gets ready for this date. He gets to the restaurant, and of course the date doesn't show up, which I already was like, "Oh, you missed that date. You absolutely missed that date," because she looked like she was into him when she reminded him about the date. So he calls her and she basically goes off on him. She was like, "Yeah, I had steak by myself 2 days ago." And he was like, "But we were supposed to meet today. Today is Friday." She was like, it's Sunday, dimwit. He was like, "No, Friday comes after Thursday." She was like, "And that doesn't change the fact that it is Sunday, which means lose my number." And she hangs up on him. And
not before she says cheers. She's like, "Lose my number. Cheers." And hangs up. Like, she's so friendly. Like, she's so nice. Like, like you're dumping him, but actually saying cheers before she dumps him. Like, that's sweet.
But this poor man, he's just sitting there. He's so dejected because he has no clue what just happened. He's like, "Wait," and the waiter comes by. He was like, "What is today?" And the waiter's like, "Sunday." He was like, "Oh no. Then he's like, "Okay, well, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and have the steak." And the waiter's like, "Sure, how would you like to have that steak?" "Good. I would like a good steak." And again, we have to remember he's vegan, so he probably has never ordered a steak in his life. But he was so dejected. He was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna eat the steak." And
he's like, "I'll do it well done." I was as a waiter and a steak aficionado, I was angered by this whole end of this scene.
Well, I think
don't take advantage of that poor man.
I think he was already upset because Mark had been there Steven had been there for a while waiting for his date. And even just the way he came to him, he was like, "Are we still waiting for someone?" And Steven was like, "Yep." He was like, "It's not looking good though." And the waiter was like, like whatever. Like, he had that air like, yeah, as if somebody is meeting you for dinner. I didn't like that waiter. I don't like most of the people that Steven interacted with, though. I'm noticing that in this episode. I don't like most of them because the little kid was kind of a shit to him. And the person whose back he accidentally fell asleep on the bus was kind of like, "Get off of me." And
no, I would have done the same thing if someone would have leaned on me and tried to fall asleep on me too. I would have been like, "Shut down."
I mean, I understand, but it's not like he had much choice. I mean, they were on that bus like sardines. They were like packed in there. So
yeah, but he full on leaned on him though.
He probably fell asleep. I have been standing on the MARTA train holding onto the guardrail, and the motion of the train will just kind of lull you to sleep. So I can see that happening. But the guy didn't have to be so mean about it. It's not like he did it on purpose. And then, of course, the bitch boss, and then now the waiter, and then Khonshu has been like calling him an idiot. I'm tired of people being mean to him. Stop laughing at me, Anthony.
Everybody hates Steve. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
But he's not allowed to have meaningful personal relationships.
I guess
he can't have anyone start to get to know him, because then they'll realize something's wrong.
I guess, but that kind of explains the whole phone conversations with mom through voicemail message. Because Mike, I think you're right. I think his mom is dead, or maybe just doesn't exist, or I don't know. I don't think mom is ever answering the phone.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Go ahead.
Here's something else that I have seen. So couple of people, most notably Theories by T that we follow on TikTok, made a comment about about Steven's English accent, because he's like, it's not really a bona fide English accent. It's kind of like in between what a British accent is supposed to be from various regions. And someone pointed out that maybe the accent is actually supposed to sound a little fake, because Mark was, like Laura said, he's from the States, he's from Chicago. And so maybe it's this Steven persona who is supposed to be British and is speaking with this accent, but Mark doesn't really know what a British accent sounds like. So he's just using his best guesstimation. But I was thinking maybe that's another reason why mom is not picking up the phone, because one, she doesn't recognize the voice that's calling. And she's just like, okay, she's hearing these voicemail messages and she's probably like, who the hell is this? Like, Steven is calling, but maybe it's Mark's mom. I don't know. It's only one episode in, but there's like so many questions I have about this character and the other personas within him and how they all interact with people that Steven or Mark or whoever comes into contact with on a day-to-day basis. Because again, at this point, Mark is supposed to be the dominant personality, correct? But it looks like for the last few months, Steven has been the dominant personality. So it's like, is Steven living Mark's life, or is Mark living Steven's life? Or it's just, I have questions.
Depends on what day it is, to be honest with you. It literally depends on what day it is. Sometimes midday. He is okay. They're saying he has this disorder, but in the comic book, I always put it down to the fact that he had one too many people in his head, and he couldn't help himself. He never comes across as being just doing it just to do it. It just hits him. But my thing is that growing up reading a comic book, it always seemed like he was the kind of guy that once he wrapped his head around, okay, today I'm Steven, or today I'm Mark, the other personalities would get upset and would sort of boot them out so they could be in, like you said, the driver's seat. It's something that he literally has had all his life, and he literally can't control. I mean, the moments that he's actually lucid is actually a good thing, because he can actually think. Because, like I said, he does so many different personalities with so many different things, and like he talks to himself, he thinks he's this person, he thinks that person. He is seeing things. It's all in his head all the time, and it's gotten to the point where there's a couple times where he's just one person for like a year, and he actually starts to miss the other people because he doesn't feel quote unquote whole unless he's got all of them. And then after about a couple of weeks, months, he forgets that he wanted to be by himself, and it sort of goes back and forth.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand that, and I know that at least from my understanding of DID, I know that there's, like I said, there is a dominant personality, and it's not necessarily who the original person was, like who the whole person was before their mind fractured. And usually that dominant personality is the one who can kind of control how things go. But we also know that the persona that comes forward also is a trauma response. So you have different personalities that are able to deal with the different traumas that a person has faced or different aspects of their life. So I guess at this point, again, like I said, we're only one episode in, but I'm curious to see like which one of them is supposed to be the dominant personality. Like, is Mark the actual dominant as far as the owner of the body, or is Steven the dominant, at least until something like traumatic or something hard comes out? Because obviously Mark is the one that's like the mercenary. He's the fighter. He's the one that protects the body, protects them. And we see that because every time Steven blacks out and comes back too, you got bodies on the ground. You got a dead person in the back shot. You've got the maneuvering of the truck and the driving skills, because Steven even says, why am I in this truck? I don't even have my license. Like, he doesn't drive. So I'm just curious to see, like, and hopefully, like Anthony said, we'll probably see where they kind of explain how we got to this point in the Alps. Like, we might see some flashbacks and how the different personalities come to take over. I mean, we see at the end of the episode when Steven is fleeing from the Hellhound that he's panicking and this thing is about to get him. And this is when he finally sees Mark and acknowledges that there is someone talking to him that's him. And Mark is like, give me control. I can take care of this, but you got to give me control. And he's sitting there fighting against, no, this is not real. You're not real. This is just a voice in my head. Like, literally, yes, it is a voice in your head, but that's the physical representation of that voice. And so once Mark takes over, you start to see him change. You start to see, kind of like, again, the whole Imhotep thing. When he started getting a body, you kind of see the little, things take over. And then of course, that's when we get the Moon Knight suit, which the way that they present these costumes, like the white, the dark gray, the gray, is so clean. And they're so, like, they're beautiful. I don't know any other way to describe it, but you get to see that part of the personality take over. And I was just like, oh, okay, this is going to be really interesting. But yeah, I kind of like, now that we see how they've introduced Steven's personalities, I just kind of want to see how they are going to explain, like, who has control? How do they determine which one gets control? I mean, again, obviously Mark is in control when they are in danger, but how does Steven break forth and gain control, especially if they're looking at him like he's the idiot? Like, why would we ever willingly give him control of the body? So what is it about Steven's personality that brings him forth? I'm just kind of curious to see how they're going to explain all of that and work that in the story. And then with everything else that he has going on, it's just kind of like, it's a lot to keep up with,
I don't know. I think things are starting to change, because maybe, Mark being the original, maybe Mark Spector was the original personality, and to deal with some trauma, he created all these other personalities. But it seems that Mark isn't as in control as he used to be, because he's having to now ask. As the episode went on, he seems to have to ask for control.
Right.
Like, he was able to take it a couple of times, but it seems like it was getting harder and harder for him to take control, to the point where he literally has to ask Steven to give him control. So maybe that Steven's personality it seems like whoever's in the driver's seat has more control than they used to. Or maybe that Steven is getting more control when he's in the driver's seat.
Maybe as he's becoming more aware.
Yeah,
because again, at the beginning,
the more aware he becomes,
yeah,
the more power he has.
Okay.
Which he never had before. And everything that Mark has done has been to keep Steven from finding out that he has other personalities.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of seems like ever since, like, it's kind of a given that like Mark dies and Khonshu gives him another shot, but it's like maybe his other personalities are being used to shield Mark from something.
Khonshu says, "You promised me the idiot wouldn't interfere."
He did. He did. Yes.
Yeah.
But then, like I said, I feel like, so at the beginning, we see Steven, and like I said, he seems to think that he has this sleepwalking disorder, and that's what he's doing, trying to keep himself from sleepwalking, trying to keep himself from leaving the apartment. And then as the episode goes by, you hear, like, he hears Khonshu call him Mark or address Mark or say something about give Mark control. And of course, he doesn't understand what he means. He's like, what are you talking about? But at the same time, he's like, I'm talking to a voice in my head, or I'm talking to a voice that I hear. What the hell is going on? And then when he gets the phone call on Mark's phone from Layla, and she was like, Mark, well, why are you asking me who I am? What's going on with you? And he was like, why did you just call me Mark? Why did you just call me Mark? So I think as the episode goes on and he starts maybe putting some pieces together, maybe he still doesn't understand that it's DID, but he does realize that there's something, like there's a person named Mark involved in his life some kind of way. And he's not sure how, but the more he starts to piece that together, like you said, he starts being more in control, and Mark has to be like, okay, hey, we're in danger. We have a hellhound coming after us. I think you need to let me take control. And Steven is sitting there, no, this is not happening. This is not real. This is not real. And I think the more he's convincing himself that it's not real, that's when Mark starts to lose his grip until he's like, yo, dude, if you don't let me take control, you're going to die, or we're going to die. Just let me do this. And then you see Steven kind of go, okay.
Did he call him hellhound?
To me,
jackal.
I know you call them hell.
They're hellhounds to me.
They're pretty hellhoundish.
They're jackals. Hellhounds are completely different.
See, I couldn't really get a look at what they were because it was moving so fast. So of course, me being a supernatural person, when you see something like that, that's a fucking hellhound. So
I think it's a combo. Whatever. I think it's a combo because I was with Hanukkah going, oh, supernatural,
right? But okay, so if it's a jackal, whatever demonic animal that's trying to eat you. That's all I need to know. So, but yeah, it's just, that whole thing was interesting. And then, I like the subtleties that they put into both of these characters, because even when Steven is in the apartment and he hears, I think it was it Khonshu or was it Mark at this point talking to him or calling his name, Steven, and he starts looking around. Okay. And he starts looking around, and when he goes into the bathroom, of course, the light is off. So we don't get to see the actual reflection. You kind of see the silhouette of the reflection, but you can tell there's like a slight difference in the silhouette, even though you can't say specifically what it is at that point. But when you see him in the reflection in the bathroom as he's running away from the demonic animal, you look and the slight difference, their hair is different. Like Steven's hair is kind of straight and it's kind of all over the place. And Mark has this weird, like curly Q stuff going on with his hair. Very slight, but enough to make you understand that this is not the same person. And I think for Steven to look at that and be like,
it sort of goes back to what Mike said earlier, especially about Oscar Isaac, the physicality. Like he completely changes how he carries himself when he's Mark. He walks with more confidence. He stands with more confidence than he does as Steven. And it's really apparent.
Yeah.
It's just
he's killing this role.
Like I said, watching him is just kind of like that's a masterclass on screen. Just watch how he moves, watch how he works. It's amazing. I'm just saying. But
Right.
How he discovers the secret hiding space. He just happened to look. So I think the wall is starting to come down between him and Mark. Mm-hmm. Because he finally notices some of the things in the apartment that don't look right.
Yeah, like the scrape marks up under the table. And when he pulls it over, he's like, okay, he stops it right where it stops. And you have to think about it. For that to be a cement floor, I think that was a cement floor, or was it wood? But whatever, that table has been moved so many times that you have the indention in the table. And it's kind of like, he's looking at it like, how did I not notice this before? Like, how many times?
It's almost as if Mark is getting sloppy. Like, I think from him getting back from Switzerland, Dusseldorf, or wherever the hell he was, like he just, I mean, he was in a panic. He saw the fish was dead. He was like, fuck, I gotta fix the fish. So he fixes the fish, then he gets everything else done. He puts everything up where it's supposed to be. He kind of fixes the rug haphazardly, so you can still see the scratch marks. Then he's like, okay, I gotta buckle in, put the sand back, then I gotta knock out because it's getting ready to come back. Then he nods out, comes back, and he's like, fuck, wait, why is my fish there? Then he goes through the whole thing. So I think that it is probably just because Mark probably is dealing with Khonshu too, when you're thinking about it, because Khonshu's the one that he has to deal with. So Khonshu's probably like, why is this idiot all of a sudden very conscious? Yeah, we have to do something about it.
Khonshu does not like Steven.
At all. He hates him.
The idiot.
Despises him.
The idiot.
Like, stop being so mean to him. He doesn't know that he's another personality in somebody else's body. He doesn't know he's hitchhiking, but I don't know. Like I said, it's interesting to see how they're doing this and to try to figure out, because, like Steven, when he goes back to work, which is weird to me, because I'm like, okay, so did Steven have a day off and miss Friday at work and nothing happened? Because with that boss, he should have been fired.
I think he's probably the most loyal employee she's ever had based on her personality. So like, who would want to work for her?
No,
like she fires him, somebody comes in,
right?
Then she has to train someone new. That person's like, oh, she's a bitch, I quit. No, she's gonna keep Steven around. Yeah. And can we talk about the Razor phone? Like, when was the last time you saw a Razor?
Shout out to the Razor. I love that phone.
Are they coming out with a new model? Because I know they tried to bring it back a couple of years ago.
I believe they are, or I believe they may already have.
I think they tried.
There's a screen version one.
Okay.
A screen one, you can touch the screen. It looks really cool.
Oh God, no.
Yeah.
But that looked like an original one. That doesn't look like a new.
No, that was an OG. That's like a track phone version of it.
Like, how was Steven even keeping that thing charged? Like, he really kept the charger for that long?
Because if Steven is like any of us in that age range, he probably has a bag full of old cords from 10 years ago that he still has access to. We don't throw that stuff away. If he has, and that's one of those, like, probably a burner phone, one of the phones that you just go buy in the box and use it and then throw out. So, okay, so let me ask a question, because was Khonshu the big gray figure that he encountered in the hallway, and then that was on the side of the street? Okay,
that's Khonshu.
Okay, because after he sees himself in the bathroom mirror and he hears the voice, all of a sudden, the lights start flickering in his apartment. It's almost like an earthquake is about to happen, because the building starts shaking, things start falling. So he runs out and runs to the end of the hall to the elevator. First of all, if my building is shaking, the elevator is the last place I'm about to be. I'm going down the stairs. But anyway, so he tries to go to the ground floor, and for whatever reason, the elevator keeps putting him back on the 5th floor. So, like I said, this figure starts walking towards him, and Khonshu, like I've not had a chance to like really take a look at him. But first of all, he looks like he has on one of those plague doctor masks. And then he's kind of wrapped like a mummy, and then he has a scythe, right? That is a scythe he has.
It looks like a scythe.
Yes.
So
Yes.
he's just like this weird mishmash of all these different types of things. And as Khonshu is approaching the elevator and he falls, it turns out it's just this old woman. Now, my question is, was that really an old woman, or was that just what his brain was? Oh, okay.
No, that was an old woman because she kind of freaked out.
Right.
She was freaking out.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's
Like, yes, this is my yes, I'm busy, my friend. This is my door right here. So
Mhm.
don't come and mess with me because I'm knocking on her door really hard right now.
Yeah.
Even though it's probably not her, it's just someone else. Please open the door so I can get away from this crazy motherfucker, please.
So he turns around and Khonshu is right there in his face. And Khonshu's mask kind of looks like it looks like a bird skull, you know. That's just what it looks like. And then all of a sudden he wakes up and he's on a bus. And I'm like, wait, like, so what happened when Khonshu confronted him in the elevator? Did Mark then take over and get on the bus, and then he again took over the body? He goes to the museum, and Harrow is there and has found him, and apparently has people there, you know, looking for Stephen, because Harrow didn't believe him when he said, yo, I'm just Stephen Grant. I work as a gift shop clerk in the museum. And he was like, oh, so you really do work here. And then he starts talking to him about Ahmet and what she does and what her purpose is. And he tells Stephen, he was like, yeah, he said, it must be difficult hearing all those voices in your head. And Stephen is looking at him like, how the hell do you know what I'm dealing with? And then as he's talking to him, like what Anthony said earlier, he's very calming and he's very charismatic, and he has this way of drawing you in. So Stephen is trying to get away from him, but at the same time, not trying to get away from him, because he's kind of sort of mesmerized by all the things that Harrow is saying. And of course, Harrow grabs his hands and he puts the cane there and he starts that little judging process. And you see the scales on his arm, they start to go haywire. And I believe they turn red as well, right?
They didn't turn a color. Like, he was like, there's chaos in you.
Yeah.
Because it couldn't tell good or bad. It didn't really tell either way. It just kept going up and down.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the trance that Stephen is in, it's broken when, you know, some doors open, and that's when he runs into one of the halls, and that's where you see the jackal, hellhound, whatever you want to call it, that thing come after him. I'm telling you, it's a hellhound. I don't care. But yeah, and he starts, you know, trying to flee from this monster. And then we get the end of the episode where Mark finally convinces him, you know, to let him take over so that he can save them. And this beatdown that he put on this thing, like, I remember seeing it in the trailers, and I was like, whoever just got their ass whooped, like, they got their ass whooped.
No, the fact that he went in there, like, the jackal hound walked in there and knocked him down, and then while he was transforming, then next thing you know, you see a sink fly out the door into the wall, and then you see the jackal hound trying to crawl out, like trying to get away, like he did, like he wanted to smoke, then he didn't want the smoke, and Mark was like, no, you getting all this, and yanked him back in there and started wailing on him. I was like, yeah.
Well, I was like, oh, and then he turns.
I mean, he reminded me of Pattinson in the Batman, like in that first scene where he was on the subway on the L tracks.
Mm-hmm. That was like,
you noticed how they kept doing all the reflections. You kept seeing the reflections everywhere of Stephen, and it's interesting because it's always 3 reflections. So I know we're probably going to get a third personality.
Okay.
I would assume so, because like when he was in his apartment, there were 3 panes, and even here in the museum, there was like when he walked off, 2 of the reflections stayed. And then
Yes,
he
I
walked
did
off.
notice that. Yes,
Yeah.
I
So
noticed that.
we're gonna get a 3rd one.
Okay.
And probably gonna be Scotty. What did the guard call him?
Scotty, yeah.
Scotty, yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I was like,
that's probably who made the date at the steakhouse was probably Scotty.
because something tells me it wasn't Mark.
Yeah.
I don't know, because Mark might have a thing with this Layla person who keeps calling on the phone. And I noticed Mike or Lori, one of you guys mentioned Duchamp, who is, I guess, supposed to be like one of Mark's allies or friends, because that was the only other name in the phone aside from Layla.
We haven't been introduced to him yet, so
Okay.
he's not in the subconscious. He's an actual person.
Okay.
So we haven't met that person yet.
Okay. But yeah, this okay, Mike, I know you took notes on this. So he was talking to bitch Becky. That's what I'm gonna call her, because I can't remember what her name was. He was talking to her. He was talking to her about the Oniad and about how they had the wrong gods represented.
No, they were missing 2.
Oh, yes, they were missing 2. Yes.
I'm ready.
Go for it.
I knew you were going to do that. Okay, so basically, a little background is like the Egyptian gods were broken down into groups of 9, and the Ennead of Heliopolis is the principal group of Egyptian gods.
Mm-hmm.
And in this group, there is Horus, Atum, Shu, Osiris, Nephthys, Nut, Tefnet, Set, Isis, and Geb. There's actually 10 in this group for some reason, but they were missing a lot of them. But the name that's notably missing is Amit. Amit is not in this group with all of them. Neither is Khonshu. So either they're in a different one together, or they're in 2 separate Enneads.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it's like all the gods that you know are the ones that are in the Ennead that they're displaying. It's like Osiris, Isis, and Horus, like most of the ones that you've heard of.
Right.
But yeah, so you just kind of have to, like I said, this is the thing where you kind of have to go along with it and just remember when you were a kid and you saw, or like when we were kids and we were breakdancing, we were doing like King Tut and stuff.
Yes.
So it's like, I appreciate this because I was so deep into, like, I actually learned how to write hieroglyphics when I was like a kid. Like, as bad and nerdy as it sounds, it's like I actually learned like what the letters meant and like wrote stuff in hieroglyphics.
That's actually impressive.
I just learned it for the hell of it. But that's just part of being a nerd. But I digress.
Okay. Okay. Anything else with like, did I miss anything? I know, we're not going like scene for scene with the recap, but I think we touched on all the important parts. But like I said, I'm looking at the scene now, Anthony, where you're talking about the different reflections. And that's what I wanted to ask. When he's looking at the reflection of Mark and he's talking to Mark and like finally deciding to let Mark take over, all of a sudden you start seeing the different symbols on the walls and reflected in the bathroom. So because you don't notice it when they first come into the bathroom, and like even now as he's Moon Knight and beating on that is a jackal, now that I see it. You don't see it on the walls now, but as he's starting to, I guess, take over, you kind of see the symbols
show up,
flashing until they're like full on, and you can see them in the reflections from the mirror. So with Mark, like with him being okay, and I guess I might be asking the wrong question. I'm sitting here trying to figure out the question I'm actually trying to ask. So the whole Egyptian symbolism that comes from Khonshu, correct? Because he is one of the Egyptian gods. And you say he's the god of...
He's the moon god, and he's the god of travelers. Like
Oh, okay.
That could explain why he can get around the world so fast. He teleports.
Right. Yeah, he's a traveler god.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing too, it's interesting, and Lori will understand where I go with this. You saying he's the god of travelers. So going to Vampire Diaries now, whole different fandom. So there's a group of supernatural beings, and they call themselves travelers, and basically they call themselves that because they can hitchhike, quote unquote, hitchhike onto another person's body. Like they can hide within a person's mind and be a part of that person, kind of sort of like DID, but they do it in a very in a very obvious way. Like it is actually, that's part of their powers, that they can like choose somebody, do a spell, and then they just kind of like hitchhike there, and they can hide, or they can if a certain spell is said, they can take control of the person's body, and the other person, the primary person doesn't know that the person is there.
So is it a consciousness or the actual physical body?
It would basically be like if I was a traveler and I wanted to, like, let's say, take over your body. There is a spell that someone would be able to do, and I would be able to shift my consciousness, leave my body.
So it's consciousness.
And attach myself to your body and consciousness.
I was just wondering, was there like shape shifting involved? Like, did your whole physical self and consciousness go into that person, or just your consciousness?
It's just your consciousness. Okay. Like your body can be somewhere, and or like if you're dying, you can pull your consciousness there and go hitchhiking somebody else and try to find a way to eject their consciousness out of the body so you can take over it completely.
There's a really good movie that was on Netflix. Was it Behind Her Eyes? Behind Your Eyes.
Okay.
That was something like that.
So yeah, so Mike saying that he was the god of travelers, I'm like, okay, so travelers could, that could have multiple meanings if you look at it from other points of view. Like if you really think about it, someone with DID, like I said, there is a primary and dominant person there, but then you have one or more other personas that are there, kind of like attaching themselves to the body. They're traveling with the body, until it's time for one of them to take over. And it's just, yeah, that's interesting. So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have not seen the second episode yet, but I know Mike is excited about it.
Y'all gotta see this episode. It's incredible. I
I'm
can't wait for us to talk about it.
Yep. But yeah, Oscar Isaac is brilliant.
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah. Real quick, shout out to the conversation between him and Harrow, where Harrow says that he is Toom's avatar, and he says, "Oh, the movie with the blue people. Yeah, I love that." And he's like, "No." He's like, "Oh, the anime. Right." I was dying. I was like, "That's perfect."
Yes, Steven is one of us.
If they would have floated a cabbage, I would have lost it.
That would have been funny.
I'm sorry, that was the best joke ever.
That would have been funny. But yeah, so we have Steven, we have Mark, and we have Khonshu, and you guys are saying we're probably going to be introduced to other personalities. Now,
at least one more.
Yeah. Now, the other thing about this show, it's another one of those damn 6-episode arcs.
I'm so pissed. I'm like, can we get a full season of something? Like, Jesus.
But do we think he's going to? Because I think there have been some rumors about other Marvel characters showing up in the show. And I've actually like stopped looking at all of that stuff because especially after Spider-Man, No Way Home, and then with all the stuff that's coming out about Doctor Strange, like of course, if you look at the rumor mill, like everybody is showing up in Doctor Strange. So it's gotten to the point where I just don't even pay attention to it anymore. So my question is, and Lori, this may be a question that's better suited for you as someone who is more intimately familiar with the comics than the rest of us are. Do you see this character fitting into the bigger MCU picture? And if so, in what capacity? Like, what would be the character that we would see him interact with, you know, first or maybe more commonly?
Blade and Black Knight.
Okay.
Definitely Blade. Definitely Blade. Like I said, I foresee them doing. I don't think that Oscar Isaac would drop a series name like Midnight Suns just haphazardly out of nowhere. I think that
I don't know because Elizabeth Olsen dropped House of M for WandaVision, and we see how that went.
Yeah, but
she
still,
may have been talking about. Never mind. She may have been speaking about Doctor Strange in Multiverse of Madness and not realize it.
No, This is what she said. Like when they first announced, I think when they first announced WandaVision, they were asking where would she like the story to go, and she talked about the House of M arc and how
I know. I'm thinking she could have had prior knowledge about the multiverse in madness.
Have you not paid attention to anything anybody says in these interviews? Marvel doesn't tell them anything. Anthony Mackie didn't even know there was going to be a Captain America 4 movie until he heard it being announced.
I'm just playing.
I mean, and the fact that they've already given so many Easter eggs about Doctor Strange, I'm wondering what they haven't shown us.
Yeah.
Like, there has to be a whole lot of shit that they have not shown us. Like, I'm really geeked for this movie, but like bringing it back around, I still, like I said, I don't think that something like Midnight Suns that has such a potentially diverse and exciting cast of characters is not something you would kind of drop. In my opinion, I don't think he would just drop that haphazardly. I think there probably have been discussions about it. Like when he did his research on the character, he probably read it and he's probably already he was probably already talking to people about potentially bringing back the Ghost Rider from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. since Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is now canon.
Give me Robbie Reyes. Yes. Oh,
wait. Did they change it? Did Kevin Feige change his mind about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Because he said it's not canon. So did he say that
it's on Disney Plus with all the other Marvel stuff?
No.
That doesn't mean it's retcon.
Did he? Because he specifically said that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not canon, even though there's evidence to the contrary. Anyway, if Agents of
S.H.I.E.L.D. is a canon, their main character shouldn't have come from the Avengers. But I digress.
That's a whole other podcast episode, Mike. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. But watched all of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., do not.
I will say this. I've said it before when we talked about the shows back even before WandaVision aired, is that I really believe the Disney shows are more like the Disney Plus Marvel shows are more like the comic books and graphic novels that come out before a major movie comes out. They're giving you background exposition. They're giving you a story about the characters, because when they do make an appearance on the big screen, we will have some history with them already. So here we're getting Moon Knight, and wherever Moon Knight shows up in the MCU, we will know who Moon Knight is. So we know that Blade is coming. We know that the Black Knight is coming. We don't really know necessarily what capacity. And we know Black Knight because of Eternals. We know Blade because of the previous Wesley Snipes movie. Nobody knows Moon Knight. And this gives them an opportunity to introduce Moon Knight to us And when he comes and appears on the big screen, boom, we know who Moon Knight is.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just glad they didn't retcon Moon Knight to be the little girl like they did Taskmaster and Black. But I digress.
You are going to be complaining about that for a long time. Just
the
let
rest
it go.
of my life.
Just
the
let it
rest
go.
of my life.
Well,
I'm not
see,
letting it go.
He's got a valid point. I'm 100.
Oh, believe me, I understand, but that's not gonna change anything. Just let it go.
No.
It already happened. It's over and done with. Just let it go.
I don't know. No, I can't. I can't. This is a great series. I can't wait for y'all to watch the second one. I can't wait to watch the third one. It's crazy. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we see Moon Knight in Multiverse of Madness somehow. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I will say this is definitely in the running for possibly being one of my favorite Disney Plus shows. It's 100%. Really, really good. It has everything. It's comedy, drama, action. And the physical comedy is hilarious. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just really, really crazy. And also dealing with the mental health aspects too. I think it's really, really impressive that Marvel continues to go down this road. I really like it.
Yeah,
I agree.
Definitely.
I agree. Laura, you have any final thoughts you want to say about the first episode?
I enjoyed it a lot. First couple of minutes I was a little confused, and then once I settled down I was like, okay, yeah, they actually did Moon Knight the right way, so I'm excited for the series. The only thing is that I'm disappointed that they didn't drop 2 episodes like they usually do. They just did the one, but you know what, I'm okay.
Yeah, I was kind of, because I thought I had heard rumors that they were going to drop 2 episodes, and then I realized I was thinking about the wrong Disney Plus series. They're going to do that with Kenobi.
Oh, well, actually that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but okay. This
is gonna be a really interesting phase with this. Then they're coming out with Miss Marvel. They announced Nova. Like, they have a lot of stuff coming out that's going to. I like how they're not still relying on the Avengers to carry them. Like, they're actually introducing different aspects of the Marvel universe, mm-hmm. and tapping into different areas and different characters, and I mean, trying and failing. It's like, I appreciate the fact that they're willing to go and dig deep for characters that most casual fans won't know. Yeah. So it'll be really interesting to see where it goes from here.
And I'm enjoying it. I mean, because I guess, technically speaking, when it comes to comic books, I would be considered a casual fan because I'm not a comic reader, but I'm very familiar with, the visual aspect of it as far as, visual medium, TV medium. I'm liking what they're doing as far as like picking these more obscure characters, if you will, and bringing their stories to the screen, because I think for a lot of people, like, if I had the time, I would actually pick up the comic books and go read about these characters and get to learn more about them, because I think they're interesting. And like I said, just what they've done with that first episode for Moon Knight, like, I've seen so many people really excited about it. And it is one of the best premieres that they've had as far as a Marvel show, and character origins. So I'm really excited to see what they do with this second episode and how they're going to progress the story from here. Like, I'm excited to meet the other personas and see what they bring to the table. Like, do we have other meek personas kind of like Steven, or are all of them like badasses like Mark, or assholes like Khonshu, even though Khonshu is not a persona, but still he's there, he's present, he's very condescending towards Steven, which, again, stop being so mean to him. But
the only alter ego we haven't met is Jake Lockley, and I think that's the cab driver.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that is the cab driver.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the only other persona that we haven't met yet. Mm-hmm. But it's just kind of, I mean, unless he has some kind of knowledge, like if Mark had something and he turned it to he switched to Jake and Jake hid it somewhere and Mark needs it. That's the only way I could see them actually acknowledging that he exists. So
gotcha. Okay. All right. Well,
but we still gotta be introduced to Frenchie too, though.
Wait, we have a Frenchie in this one?
That's Ducamp that I talked about.
That's Duchamp.
Duchamp,
okay.
yeah.
Jean-Paul Duchamp.
Yes, that's Frenchie.
Okay.
And
He's called
Marlene.
Frenchie.
And don't forget Marlene.
Facts. Yes.
Who is Marlene?
Semi-quasi girlfriend.
Yeah, she's the daughter of an archaeologist that got killed, and
Yeah.
she helps him out.
That was part of that whole open the tune, things went left.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I guess that's going to be it for the discussion on the first episode, because I'm anxious now to go watch the second episode so that we can get on that discussion this week. But for now, that's it for our show. You can find us online at www.fandomhybrid.com. We are on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Fandom Hybrid. You can watch our videos on YouTube and listen to us on all major podcast streaming platforms. Thanks for listening. We hope you join the conversation next time.